Hello, and welcome to another episode of Bill and Kipp's Excellent Bible Adventure, continuing our way through the Gospel of John. And I'm Bill Brunson, one of the pastors here at Vestavia Hills United Methodist Church, and this is Kipp McClure, who's also one of our pastors. It is a joy to be able to study Scripture together and to be able to share this with you. We're picking up again where we left off really in the last episode, and it's still the Festival of Booths.
Right.
Jesus and his disciples have gone to Jerusalem, and if you remember, his brothers, or Joseph's son from previous marriages, had actually encouraged Jesus to go to Jerusalem.
Yeah, just start talking and see what happens.
Yeah, it was
kind of like a good big brother does to a little brother.
It really was. I don't know if they were fully nefarious in their intent, but it felt a little bit like that with the whole, you're stirring up a lot of stuff here in the Galilee. Why don't you take this show on the road and hit the big time in Jerusalem at the Festival of Booths?
Since you know so much about all this stuff, go tell some other people.
There you go. And debating those of us in the Galilee, not as fun maybe as debating Pharisees and Sadducees. And so he goes to Jerusalem. He doesn't go the way they want him to go. He actually sneaks down and doesn't enter the city with them. He goes in a different way, and he and the disciples, it doesn't say it in Scripture, but you can imagine they built their booth, their lean-to, because this whole process is
kind of like tailgating. You got everybody's gathering there.
Yeah, the Festival of Booths is a harvest festival, but it's also when they celebrate the Exodus from Egypt. And so they built booths like they would stay in as they were traveling through the wilderness, Moses leading them back toward the promised land. And so you can see Jesus and the boys setting up their lean-to, their little shed where they could stay. And you have Jews from all over sort of encamped around Jerusalem. And there were so many that went to this as a mandatory festival that if you think about Jerusalem in this period of time, you have the city, and then you have all in the valley, the Kidron Valley, and all around the different valleys of the 7 hills of Jerusalem. You have all of these little lean-tos set up. And then because all of the Jewish people are there, you have another ring of encampment, and that is all of the Roman soldiers come. And so like the centurion in Capernaum and the 100 to 999 soldiers that he would be in charge of, no reason to stay in Capernaum.
Yeah. I mean, if there's going to be an incident, it's not going to be in Capernaum.
Not going to be in Capernaum where the extreme old and extreme young are. No, it's going to be in Jerusalem. So they would have come down. And it's just like at Passover. They all come and they encamp around the city. And so every night on Temple Mount, the Jewish leaders would go, the chief priests, others there, would go, and they would put up these giant bowls of oil filled with wicks. And these were on giant lampstands. They would climb a ladder up there, and they would light them at night so that from Temple Mount, the highest point in Jerusalem, the top of the temple, you would cast this light off into the valley. And so it was sort of helping all these people who were trying to find their way around the city and trying to find their way around all these little makeshift roads that would pop up between where your family might put up your camp and the next family and all. So they put these lampstands up, and they were filled, like I said, with oil. And I think that probably is why we seem to be sponsored this week.
Well, yeah, we're sponsored by... I was going to get the Great Value brand and bring that,
yeah,
but I thought I'd bring out the good stuff.
Oh,
but it's olive oil, and of course we think of it really, if we want to eat the Mediterranean diet or cook specific things. But for Jesus' day, there were a lot of purposes for olive oil. You could certainly cook with it, eat the olives, and I've done this in a pinch. If you're out of lotion, you can use that as lotion. You can also, though, you can use it for fuel, and that is what burned their lamps. And so olive trees, very critical and vital to uh, to their economy and to their lives. And so those lamps on top of Temple Mount would have been filled with gallons and gallons and gallons of olive oil, and would have cost a lot of money, but it also would have lit up quite well because it would have burned for a good long while.
This says it is for salads and dipping. I mean,
See, but look at all the other things you could do with it. I mean,
it doesn't say for Festival of
It
Booze
does not
lighting.
say-
I mean, it's nowhere on
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I went to the wrong website. I think.
I guess so.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, but this didn't cost us anything, and that one would have cost us some money.
That probably
so.
would have. And this is extra virgin olive oil, which is great because extra virgin just simply means that the olives were pressed into sort of a paste and then continued pressing cold until the basically just to get the oil out. They weren't heated at all. There was nothing else done to them. It was simply cold pressed, meaning it was the first pressing of the olive to get the oil out. And so that's why it's extra virgin olive oil is it was treated that way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really how olive oil would have been done in that period. Simply put into the press and pressed out. We'll show an olive press and do with all that in another episode, probably episode 903 or somewhere along there at the rate we're going. But you're right. This would have been, I mean, imagine.
The prequel, maybe.
When we do the prequel to the Bill and Kipp's
good,
Excellent Adventure, we'll do the olive press. But can you imagine how much olive oil it would have taken to fill the giant bowls that would be filled with wicks to cast that much light out into the valley? That has to be amazing. That would have had to be amazing how much oil that would have been.
Yeah. And so, in the midst of all of this, as the people are gathering and they're there, and there's festivals going on, once again, and now the story of the woman who was accused of adultery sort of pops into the middle of this this episode.
Seems really out of place, but it's there.
But it's there. So prior to that, Jesus shows up and he says, from me comes streams of living water, and then he shows back up and another I am statement. He says, I am the light of the world. I mean, the brightest light they could make, man-made or human-made light that the people of that day could have made. And Jesus says, I'm brighter. I'm the light of the world. It's me. And then he uses the phrase, I am, which is, the Greek equivalent of Yahweh. And so didn't really make for a lot of friends. With
when
that.
you're standing on Temple Mound and you use the name of God that they didn't speak around a bunch of religious leaders who are lighting the lamps, who are probably pretty proud of their luminary skills.
Right.
And you stand there and you say the name of God, applying it to yourself, and saying that you're brighter than their light. I mean, it's not a very good how to win friends and influence people kind of moment for Jesus.
And he'd already had the water, I'm the water of life statement.
Yes. He's already Yahweh'd once before,
right.
And now he's Yahwehing again.
And so it creates, well, we could try to go into the details of it.
Yeah.
But there's just this long, dozens and dozens of verses where they are just at it. And Jesus says, if you really were children of Abraham, you'd believe my words. And they're like, we're children of Abraham, but we don't believe your words. And Jesus said, if you would believe my words, you would know the truth and it would set you free. And they said, but as children of Abraham, and this is one of my favorite lines, we've never been a slave to anybody. How can we be any freer? And it's like, but the whole history of Israel is trying to get out of slavery, and those few moments they're not in slavery.
They're in Jerusalem for the festival of booths that recognizes or remembers the exodus from Egypt. Let's see, where they were slaves.
And they're in Jerusalem under the authority of the Roman government to whom they have to pay tribute.
Right.
And so the whole thing is,
Yes.
it's kind of that Amelia Bedelia.
Right.
The reader here, when they hear the responses, are just going, what are they talking about?
Mm-hmm.
And then another one says, he says, I'm God's son, and I'm going at some point to go to a place where you will not be able to find me. And their response is,
he's going to go kill himself.
kill himself.
Which is not anything like he says, I'm going somewhere where you will not be able to go. And they go, he's going to kill himself. It's totally two different planes of thought going on here. And yet he's staying calm in all of this, and they're getting more and more worked up.
And he's continuing to try to teach. And it's good teaching. I mean, it's clear he's trying to reiterate, I am the Son of God, and what I say is really what God is trying to tell Israel, and they're clearly rejecting it,
right?
And trying to figure out what to do with him, because, well, they would love to have a Messiah, but this is not seeming to work out, and the people are starting to like him. I mean, he's sneaking around so the crowds don't follow him, and so they're not sure. They don't really want to act in such a way to create a riot, but yet he keeps popping up, going, "I am something else," and so they're trying to figure it out. But for that one statement that he says, "I am the light of the world," for Christians, that whole image becomes for us an important image, that Jesus does illuminate the world, and that Jesus does have this ability to bring into some of our darkest moments a light that we don't have in ourselves.
Right.
And so the phraseology that he uses really means a lot. And it's one of the reasons we light candles when we get together and to remember Christ is the light of the world.
Well, and John's gospel begins in the prologue to John's gospel. He talks about that the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness doesn't overcome it. And so you get that moment of light and darkness that flows its way through John's gospel. And here he's saying, I am the light of the world. And of course, we know that at one point you also have to remember where we are in the gospel, because we are now getting very close to, we're in chapter 8.
Yeah, we're kind of,
and
the seesaw is about to flip.
Right. And so it's almost like he's moving his way up, where he's going to tilt it the other direction, and things start to go downhill as far as the people getting angry, the leaders getting angry with him. And so the things he's saying now are building that anger. It's sort of stoking that fire. And so when they ask him about how does he do what he does, how does he say what he says, and he talks about that his Father will testify on his behalf. And they're like, well, who's your Father? Well, we know that his Father is God, but they don't accept that at all.
Right.
And so they're totally thrown off by that he is even alluding to the fact that his father would be someone other than Joseph of Nazareth. For him to imply anything else is just very confusing and very infuriating.
Right. And so we're starting to see the kind of the apex of Jesus' popularity. His popularity gets a little bit more, but then by the time he gets to, really about half the book is the last week of Jesus' life. And really that's true for most of the Gospels, or a good chunk of it. And so we're leading towards those moments, but here is when the religious leaders really asking or hearing what Jesus is saying and saying, well, we don't believe that. We reject that.
Right. And even though Jesus is not blatantly saying things, they're hearing and putting it into context of their faith system. And so they're thinking that he's claiming to be greater than Abraham.
Right.
They have been accusing him of trying to be greater than Moses.
Right.
And so they're trying to put him in this lineup of people where he is claiming authority over them or superiority to them, because if they can do that, then they have him on something that would be heretical. Because no one's greater than Father Abraham in their mind. No lawgiver and no law is greater than the law of Moses and Moses himself. And so they really want to catch Jesus on one of these moments of saying he's better than. But every time he's one thing he is smarter than all of them. And every time they set the trap, it's almost like he just steps right around it and just keeps going.
Yeah. So we'll see some more of the I am statements as we go forward. But in this one, we're reminded that Jesus is the light. And even in our darkest moments, he's there for us, shining a light into the darkness.
Yeah, when we're at home in our most settled places, or even in those moments where it feels like we're living in a booth somewhere that's totally foreign and different, Jesus is the light that shines into all of those situations, all those circumstances, and it's the light that will shine brighter and brighter if we will let it.
No matter where we are.